they want me to talk to you guys about one of your guys' recent films.
Yes.
Barb and Star.
Mm-hmm.
So hey, congratulations on that project. Yeah.
We're getting
Thank you.
Echo.
So tell us first of all, I guess the easy question that a lot of people would ask is, who is Temprimental VFX?
Yeah, well, Temprimental was a company that I started about 6 years ago, having sort of come from the facility world. I decided it was time to sort of start my own company, and you know, Robert's very much a part of that, as is Chrissy, who unfortunately you haven't gotten to meet today. So, you know, we're a remote-based visual effects company with an outreach all around the world. That interestingly was a concept that took quite a while to gain traction with a lot of people, only because you know, the major studios and producers weren't sort of used to working with a VFX remote workflow company. You know, it's always sort of been brick and mortar. So the idea of a company like ours was very, very new, and you know, and so as we've sort of evolved and become older, and especially sort of during the unfortunate COVID times that we've now found ourselves in, you know, especially with just everything to do with a lot of production, our company's been gaining more and more traction just with the idea that we are already set up remotely. We do have this outreach around the world. We can kind of create a 24-hour sort of visual effects production process, and really when things did start shutting down in March, movies like Barb and Star were fast-tracked into post, along with other projects that we were quickly thrown onto, only because we were ready from the get-go, you know, to sort of to tackle that workflow. So Barb and Star is just a prime example of us shooting a movie, and Robert will sort of talk to you more about the creative and all the crazy effects that we did and everything else.
Hello?
You froze, Raoul.
I think
Froze.
he completely froze. Okay. Robert, could you go ahead and tell us how does this remote thing actually work while Raoul tries to get back onto us?
Yeah, I'll just tell him he froze. He probably knows, but yeah, he's probably relogging in.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, the interesting thing is there's a lot of these big companies that we all know about, you know, the digital domains and the MPC, and they've got branches in London and Vancouver and Montreal, and they can take advantage of.
There we go.
There we go.
I don't know what happened there.
While you were away, I was just describing how important I am compared to you, really.
Oh,
you know.
Exactly. Yeah. Don't listen to his waffle. Just listen to what Robert has to say.
No, he just said talk about the remote thing, and actually, what I was thinking about was how the bigger companies have like an international reach. You know, they've got you know, a chain out of India to do their roto work, and they've got an office in Vancouver and Montreal and Louisiana, and they can do the tax deals and all that. So what Raoul set up before I even got involved, which was pretty cool, was the ability for companies that don't have the $100 million visual effects budget to take advantage of great artists all over the world. It doesn't have to be you're one little boutique company in LA with your 7 artists or your 20 artists or your even 50 is considered boutique now. So we've got that reach all over the world to enable a producer to really spread out. You know, like we can, somebody's echoing. I don't know who it is.
It's Raoul. He has a speaker.
Oh, mine's just coming through my iPad. I don't have a speaker on. Let's see. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
I mean, I'll try to go to my headphones, but...
Testing 1, 2.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, very well.
Yeah. All right, anyway, I'll mute myself whilst you're talking.
Anyway, so the kind of cool thing is, you know, let's say I'm a film producer and I need to do, you know, a pretty heavy visual effects movie, but we're not Marvel, you know, we're not going to do that, but we've got a lot of shots, some significant stuff, real CG creatures and everything. What you really need is to be able to go to the artists that do water really well, the artists that do 3D creatures really well, great compositors that can, you know, put together the blue screen stuff, motion graphics people. And so that's really what we're doing. Like, whereas an MPC has all that under one roof, a small boutique company, if you go one-stop shopping, doesn't do that. The other thing you could do is, of course, a film can hire a supervisor and set up their own visual effects department, manage it, then they've got to do all the post-flow. And what Raoul's done is created a model where he can do more projects at once and sort of provide an in-house visual effects team for each film with a global reach that they would never get if they set up their own little, unless they set up their own visual effects team on the movie. But a lot of people are reticent to do that because they got to hire a supervisor, a producer, they got to have offices, and the post workflow is really complicated. So then you need visual effects editors and in-house coordinators, and so that's what he's providing to a range of films that are not the top budget ones. That's a no-brainer for them. And then the ultra low ones, they don't do effects anyway. So it's to get that middle market, and it's a pretty interesting model.
Yeah.
Now I'll talk about the creative part, since I discussed the business model.
I was going to say, we reversed the roles.
Yeah.
No.
Well, you froze up. I was just
I froze.
I froze for you.
Yeah.
I was dancing.
But that's it. I mean, look, that is the overview of the company, and you know, we're going from strength to strength, and we're finding ourselves on these type of films that we weren't necessarily tackling before, Barb and Star being one of them. And I think it's a good example of how this setup worked for this particular film, given that we had, you know, close to 600 visual effects shots, and having to get it done within the testing times that we found ourselves in last year. So anyway, there we go. That's the overview of Temprimental.
Well, is your business model, is this easier to manage, especially sort of like a worldwide 24-hour type of a business?
I mean, easier in a sense, no. I mean, it's very it's very long hours. It's taken us quite a while to streamline the process and understand, you know, just how to make the whole flow of visual effects production over a 24-hour cycle work. But you know, it's taken us some years to fine tune it. Now we are in the sweet spot of understanding. Well, it's second nature now, so we know what we're doing. We've made a lot of mistakes along the way, but I think that's important in any company's growth, is to understand its mistakes and better itself from them, and that's exactly what we've done. And you know, we pride ourselves on being able to come through with what we're offering the studios in terms of how we're breaking things out. And I think, you know, really the most exciting thing for us is that we're not tied down to one particular area anymore. You know, we can go right across the globe and seek out the best talent. And there's so much talent out there. I mean, there's tremendous talent in Los Angeles, there's Vancouver, Montreal, London, France, Italy, you name it. I mean, you know, and even with some of the stuff that the Indian teams are doing now, I mean, it's just, and Asia, you know, I mean, it's just, there's so many pockets of interesting, talented companies that sometimes don't get the opportunity to do what it is that we're doing. And I think what's great for Robert and I is that we find these little diamonds in the rough, as it were, and we bring them to what we're doing, and they shine, and it's great. It opens your eyes to a market that sometimes you're not necessarily exposed to, and I think that's the exciting part of what we're doing.
Excellent. Robert, 600 shots in VFX shots in Barb and Star alone it sounds a lot, especially to someone like myself who actually watch it and can't tell which are VFX or which are not, because I'm sure a lot of it's not obvious VFX shots in the movie. Could you basically kind of tell us some of the crazy stuff that, for example, that you guys have to do in the film like this?
Sure. Yeah, the development of the film was not supposed to be quite as visual effects heavy. And during the creative process, I mean, actually, that was one of the things that was really fun about it. We had the director, the writers, they were super creative. As they went along, and sometimes as they saw visual effects, they were like, wow, can we do this? Can we do that? And we found ways to accommodate it. And of course, the studio, had to approve some more money here and there, but this wasn't like a production gone wild. I mean, we were able to pull things off, find offsetting costs. Like, that's one of the benefits of being this type of flexible. So let's say you want to do a pretty darn expensive CG animal, then find a person who does blue screen comps from their home that used to work at a big studio and has all the skills, but doesn't have the overhead. So, so we would do stuff like that. But on this film, we go back all the way to the very first meetings when Raoul and I went in and met with Josh and the team from Lionsgate and from Sanchez, and it was going to be, how do you see approaching this film? How do you see approaching this effect, that effect, this effect? And you never know in those meetings, are you saying the right thing, you saying the wrong thing? And they really liked our creative approach on a lot of the stuff. We had kind of a vision for how to do the alligators, how to do the mice, how to do the mosquitoes, and all these things were in there. We were just worried that when they did the budget crunch afterwards, that some of these really cool sequences would go away. Because, especially the mice, for example, because it's only 10, 20, 30 seconds in the whole movie, and it's not a plot point. She doesn't need to talk to computer-generated mice. But that's what makes the film so incredible, is that they actually stuck to their creative vision, and Josh fought for it. And there was times where it was teetering on, budgets always go up, and maybe we should either do the mice a different way, or, have one mouse, or use a real mouse and pretend it's a CG mouse. But anyway, we stuck with it. And the mice was really one of those crazy sequences, because if you could imagine, we would have these creative sessions where they would rough in the gray shade animation for the string of mice, and we'd say, this mouse should do that, and that should do that, and that's what a drummer does, and this is what a violinist does, and we'd get stuff from an orchestra and look at how they behaved. And so literally we created the acting for each mouse separately. And it was not like you just, there's no computer program that generates like 10 mice playing instruments. So you had to do the instruments had to be built, and their fur, we went back and forth on what should their fur look like, because we didn't want them to look like nasty rat-like creatures. We didn't want them to look, kind of fake and Mickey
glossy.
Mouse.
Yeah.
So we spent weeks just, what should their fur look like? Fur tests, and should it be shiny, not shiny, glossy, and which way do their tails, when they're playing, should their tails go up and sit in the air, or should they lay down on the stage, and then you see the movie and it's like 10 seconds and it's funny as heck, but it was an amazing amount of work that went into those 10 seconds. And And again, it wasn't like the lead actor. That's the incredible thing. It wasn't, you know, Kristen Wiig doing something, or Annie Momolo, or Jamie Dornan, you know, and they kept him in. And then the creative process was like, oh, we want them to come in on a magic wave at the end, and we shot a real plate dragging a piece of PVC tubing through the ocean. I shot it myself, so that they could come in on a rolling wave. But they saw it and they said, you know, the wave should be magic. The wave should be glowing. The wave, how about if the wave had turtles next to it? You know, those were the things that came up after the fact. And took an immense amount of work at the end, because we didn't really shoot it with that in mind. So you had to kind of figure out, can you fit the turtles in the plates that we have, and how much has to be CG water, how much has to be our real plate water, and so on. But I think the one day, like on almost every movie that I ever have worked on, and I've worked on a ton of them, and sometimes I'll have this one moment on the film where I go like, I can't believe that, like, here I am, this kid that grew up in New Jersey with no connections in the movie business, and now I'm in a sewer 200 feet below London filming rats or something. Or, you know, I had those moments, like I was in Red Square on the movie The Saint, and I thought, you know what? Russia's always been the menace, the Cold War, and now I am standing in the middle of Red Square in Moscow. This is unbelievable, and making a movie. And so on Barb and Star, that moment for me was, they were like, we got to do these alligators. How are we going to do it? And, you know, the obvious answer is computer generated alligators. You know, you have a box and we make alligators. But we decided that if we could cut down the amount of shots, it would A, be cheaper, and B, if we could start the sequence off with real alligators and then go to CG with them doing things that we couldn't get a real alligator to do, to chase them over to the edge of the cliff, people would buy into it. Would give them a more verisimilitude, more reality. So we brought an alligator into the soundstage in Mexico, and I built a set with sand and the box and wrapped it in blue screen, and there I was shooting alligators against blue screen in Mexico City. And that was one of my moments, like, I cannot believe I am actually on a soundstage with a techno crane filming an alligator. And then the alligator started to do snapping, which we didn't think it was going to do, and I grabbed the camera, went handheld, and the thing tried to bite me, but it's actually a great shot, and it's in the movie. So
well, I'm amazed, Robert, that you would sacrifice your life just to get this VFX shot right.
Well,
Robert's a dab hand with animals.
Raoul's, but he wasn't there that day.
Yeah, exactly. Always feed the producer to the alligator.
Exactly.
Hey, Raoul, could you explain how you work with the studios to make this economically efficient? Because special effects shots tend to be very expensive, but it seems like Temprimental try to work with them, trying to figure out solutions, right, to bring costs down.
No, absolutely. I think there are many different ways that we had to tackle it. I think to start off with, you sort of you break the script down, you turn in the first budget, and you just sort of get to a point where everyone says, okay, I know you need this, but we've only got that. And at that point, we started using tax credits as well, because those are terrifically important in today's business model. So we did do some work up in Vancouver, and we also did a lot of work in Montreal as well, just to sort of help studios recoup some rebates there, using local artists, of course, and local companies. So that was one of many ways where we sort of try to keep costs down. I think along the way, Robert and I have made some great friends within the industry as well, and it's not unheard of for us to try and lean on people and get a little bit of a favor out of a movie that doesn't necessarily have the same punch in terms of budget to cover certain visual effects shots. So we have a terrific relationship with Rhythm and Hues, and and they gave us a great, you know, a great deal on the alligators, and you know, and so on, and really by just sort of pinpointing certain companies that have certain skill sets to do whatever the VFX tasks are, and then keeping everything within a local team that we had here in Los Angeles, both in LA and up in Northern California. We, you know, sort of individual artists and local teams. That's how we just, that's really how we were able to craft the whole budget, stretch out the dollars, and make it all work, you know?
Absolutely. We just lost Robert briefly, but I'll ask a question with you.
Yeah.
Obviously, we've been going through sort of like a crazy pandemic during, you know, this past year. Is Temprimental actually getting more work because of the pandemic? Are like more studios coming to you guys because of active remote working?
We have, yeah. I mean, we've definitely had one of our busiest years. I mean, well, 2020 was one of our busiest years. Absolutely. I think there was no bigger moment to kind of put a spotlight on what we were doing than what happened. You know, a lot of companies today have adapted to the remote workflow, and you know, so we still find ourselves very, very busy though, because as Robert said earlier, you know, our niche is a certain film, and you know, the tentpole movies is not something that we kind of choose to go after, only because that was really my background came from the sort of mid-tier films, and I just saw a gap in the market in terms of just trying to make those budgets work, but really to try and support the studios by having a more full-time dedicated team. And as a result of that, we've gained more and more traction, and with people coming to us and looking for that solution. So, and I think if anything, yes, the pandemic has made everyone realize that it can work remotely. Even though, as Robert mentioned, behind the scenes, we've been doing a lot of things remotely for many, many years. But even more so today, it's an accepted way of doing things. And I just always say to people, you know, just make sure you got a robust internet at the end of the day in your house, because that's the key, really. At the end of the day, when you've got artists that are working from home, as long as they got a robust internet, then we're okay, you know.
Hey, Robert, welcome back. I was going to ask what was the greatest challenge on Barb and Star for the company, and how did you guys handle like any like post shots that needs to be reshot for the film?
Well, the biggest challenge in any film that you're going to come across is when you're doing things that exist in the real world, like the alligators. Making the alligators look real was tough. Lighting them and putting them into that environment. The turtles was a huge challenge because we didn't really shoot it knowing we were going to ever do that. So we didn't get the chance to shoot real splash elements for them and, you know, put some kind of mock-up turtle in the water. And the mice were easy because we totally knew we were going to do that. So we shot that right. We shot HDR photography. I knew how to light the mice. I mean, that was done exactly like that. But one of the biggest challenges for us on this movie was simply the really harsh conditions when we were filming. The heat in Mexico, when we were there midsummer, like in July, it was so hot, it was really, really hard to believe. I mean, I've been in many hot places. I've shot in the Amazon, and I've filmed in Thailand and in Louisiana in the summer, but this was something else. I mean, this was literally like where you could get ill if you didn't hydrate all day long. You know, I mean, it was that hot. So and working in those conditions, we still had to do a ton of visual effects, like on the beach. That was on the beach in Cancun. Mexico City wasn't hot. That was easy. We were on a soundstage there on locations. By the way, great plug for Mexico City. We had an incredible staff down there, and Miguel Levin, who was my compatriot visual effects supervisor. You know, we were bouncing between units together because we were shooting first and second unit at the same time, and he was awesome. And I really grew to like and respect him. So Mexico City has some sincere talent. And the language thing wasn't tough for me because I speak Spanish. But you could clearly see that language slowed us down a little bit here and there, but not too much. I mean, obviously they hired people that speak English, but once you get past the head of a department and you're down into the other rungs of the department, it was all in Spanish. So there was really two worlds going on. And then when we had extras, the extras, you know, weren't going to understand commands on a bullhorn in English very much. So the director would speak to his counterpart director, and he would speak in Spanish. It would be like, not exactly. So production problems in the heat. And then we had to shoot all sorts of visual effects plates for people flying through the air, for riding behind the boats. I used a drone a lot to shoot plates with. And we really wanted, you know, when the submarine comes in, if you recall that shot, it's coming in like really close. So I had an unbelievably great drone pilot. He was too good for his own good, because he was so good at flying that we just kept saying, get lower, lower, lower. Oh, right along the water. Chase the, you know, the jet ski in. And he would go lower. Okay, okay. And he was so good. Well, then a rogue wave came up and just snatched that drone right out of the air. And it was gone. And we sent out a jet ski to recover it. We actually recovered the drone. The drone was completely destroyed, but the chip holding the footage was good because there's nothing to waterlog on a little chip. So we actually got the shots, but we did lose a drone.
Mm.
Wow, that's the things that some of us don't think about VFX shooting here.
Yeah.
No, like for the sequence where the girls float down with their culottes. We didn't talk about the culottes, but the culottes were supposed to be practical. You know, it was one of the budget things. Look, you want to spend money on CG alligators and you want to spend money on mice and all that. Let's have special effects do the culottes. And they did. They did a really credible job. We had they had like rings around them to hold them open, so it looked like they floated, and we had fans going up from the ground, and we put them on we built a big rig by the ocean so that we didn't have to composite them. And anyway, in the end, it's a comedy, and they wanted the culottes bigger and more funny and everything. So in the end, we had to replace all the culottes. All the shots were CG culottes with real world cloth simulation with you know, you call it fluid dynamics, but it's really air dynamics blowing the material around. And it took months to perfect the culottes. And that's a big plot thing. And we weren't expecting to do that, but you know, that's the thing with comedies is once the joke starts to really work, it gets bigger, and then the visual effects get bigger too. So wow. That's where we were at.
I watched the movie twice, and I didn't even realize so much work was into that stuff by VFX. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And the mosquitoes. I mean, you know, mosquitoes are hard because they're tiny. They're really small, and nobody knows what a mosquito swarm looks like. And they didn't look good when you did them real world. Like, okay, you do the real size and you put 100,000 of them in the model and you fly them. And it just looked like a black clump, you know, like a black nothing floating through the air. So to develop the look of the mosquito swarm, again, it doesn't look anything like what a real mosquito swarm would look like, but it worked for the movie. And we spent ages back and forth in terms of how big should the mosquitoes be? Are they real world size, or are they 2 inches big? And what does the swarm looks like? And we kind of used the flocking birds, the ones that you see on YouTube where the birds are flying and flying and flying around. That's kind of the model we used for the mosquito swarm. And it was really difficult to make mosquitoes look good. And I found that in every visual effects movie, when the thing you're creating is tiny and it's working in a very big world, like, how many times have I been told, oh, we want to do a cockroach? Well, it's really hard to see a cockroach unless you have a macro lens on it, like 1 inch away. And then you can't see the person behind it. And the mosquitoes were kind of the same way. So we had this big thing about scale with mosquitoes.
Wow. Well, is a process like this with Temprimental make things run a lot smoother and faster than to have a physical VFX studio? Or is it about the same?
From my standpoint, given it's my company, of course it is. No, I mean, listen, it's not the same. I think there's different efficiencies, so I can't really compare well, I can compare the two because I've been in both scenarios. I'd like to think that ours is a little bit more is more streamlined, only because of the volume of outreach that we have, so we're to be able to adapt to certain scenarios very, very quickly. Sometimes you have to wait for artists to free up in order for that to happen. In our case, we don't, because really we have everything at our fingertips that we could possibly need in order to get something done. So, but I think, look, I think most of the facilities are very efficient. It really just boils down to a choice in terms of going to a one-stop shop or being part of something that has a lot more outreach and can sort of, like we say, extend those dollars and really fit the VFX desires into a certain budget parameter, and that's where we come into our own, really. So
excellent. Well, let me wrap it up with you gentlemen with one more thing. I know I've taken a lot of your time already. Could you guys talk about some of the known revealed projects that you could reveal that Temprimental is actually working on that's coming up soon?
Well, Robert and I are actually just finishing a film for Sony right now. That's titled Shrine. That's going to be a very interesting one to talk about. I mean, just because of this, again, was a movie that we nearly finished. We finished 10 days before we were due to complete. Everything shut down. And so we went on a very long hiatus. We came back. We lost some of our actors, and all be revealed in terms of what we had to do there in terms of just jigsaw puzzling the whole movie together through visual effects. And look, you're probably no stranger today to know that, with COVID, we can only have a certain amount of crowds on set now. So it's all about tiling and virtual backgrounds and digital extras. And, I'll let Robert kind of talk a little bit more about that. But that's one of the hardest films we've probably ever undertaken, actually, just because of the magnitude of what we had to band-aid together because of the pandemic. And I think that one's releasing next month, right, Robert?
It is, yeah. And
yeah,
that's an example where the pandemic shut that movie down. And if it wasn't for visual effects, they would have had to do a write-off because they'd spent the bulk of the money, paid the big actors, and they could have never come back and finished that movie if visual effects couldn't have figured out solutions for how to finish scenes that you were no longer allowed to film during the pandemic by using visual effects technology.
Wow. But I will say this, we need to be careful, obviously, because the movie hasn't been released, so we are bound by NDAs and everything else. So but I would say it is known that Shrine's coming out next month. We're also working on a really exciting Netflix project, the biopic of Marilyn Monroe, called Blonde. So that's coming out. That's coming out later on this year. And then there's a few other things in the works as well that we're doing, which we really can't talk about. But we've got some exciting stuff coming out. And I think talking to people like yourself and meeting you for the first time and getting into sort of, getting our name out there and more recognized, we're excited about the future and the other projects that are coming down the line.
Excellent. And just real fast, I know you said you don't target big tent poles, but isn't the concept is never say never if they actually approach it?
That's what, when Robert's opening statement was, we don't do that. In my head, I was saying, well, not now, we don't. So you're absolutely correct with the mission statement. It's never say never. If Marvel came knocking on the door and asked us to figure something out in the way that we do, I think I'd have a hard time saying no.
Yeah. Yeah, bring it on. Bring it on. Bring the. If you've got the pole, I've got the tent.
Terrific. Well, gentlemen, hey, thank you for speaking with me about the VFX of Barb and Star. This is quite enjoyable. You guys should reach out to me, and we could talk about your next movie again once the next film is actually completed.
That would be great. Yeah.
And by the way, I've worked on a lot of those tentpole pictures, tons of them. And that is the thing I love about this model, is that on that movie, we had to stand up an entire effects department with, multiple people working. And then we had to control all those, 10, 11 vendors. And so basically that's what Raoul's providing. So we could easily do tentpole under this model. So he's just doing something that everybody else had to do, let's say, privately under their own banner. So now you can go shopping for it at Temprimental.
Well, then I'm glad to speak to you gentlemen at the ground floor. Maybe one of these days you guys will be as big as Marvel after in a few years.
Hey, we look forward to those days.
Yeah.
Excellent, gentlemen. Next time, all right?
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.